People of God, I ask you now, not just to hear, but to awaken. There is a moment when time and eternity collide, a moment when God pulls back the veil and what was hidden is revealed. That moment is now. God is not a God of confusion nor of coincidence. He is the God of patterns of prophecy and of appointed times. Throughout Scripture, we see him moving not randomly, but with divine precision. Every word spoken, act performed, every mystery concealed was done so with purpose. There is no wasted moment in the divine timeline. And just as he hides the seed in the soil for an appointed season, so too does he hide his revelations until the moment of unveiling. Many ask, why would God hide something so important? But the truth is, what God hides, he hides not to keep it from us, but to prepare it for us. And in the process, he prepares us to receive it. Just as the Ark of the Covenant was hidden for a time, just as the scrolls were sealed in Daniel's day, just as the Messiah was veiled in prophecy until his time had come. So too are certain signs, certain truths, concealed for generations until the eyes of the watchman are ready to behold them. There is a difference between a concealed mystery and a revealed word. The concealed mystery tests the heart. It asks, will you seek? Will you watch? Will you press in? God does not cast pearls before swine. He does not give sacred things to those who do not care to look. He calls to the hungry, the desperate, the humble, those who will seek the hidden treasure of his word with all their hearts. For it is in the seeking that the soul is refined, and only when the vessel is ready will the revelation be poured out. In Jerusalem, beneath ancient stone and shadow, something was hidden. Not just a physical relic, but a message, a signal from heaven sealed beneath time itself. For 2,000 years it waited, not because God was silent, but because his calendar was counting down to this generation. We are not just witnesses of history. We are the convergence point of prophecy. And now, as the world trembles and nations rage, that which was hidden is being pulled into the light. The earth is groaning. The veil is thinning. The mystery is no longer sealed. The same God who once thundered on Mount Sinai is speaking again. Not with volume, but with urgency. Not everyone will hear it, but those who walk close to him will feel the stirring in their spirit. Something sacred is being uncovered. It is as if time itself is declaring, awaken. For what lay buried in Jerusalem was not meant to stay hidden. It was meant to rise like a signpost for the end of the age. A call to return, a call to repentance, a call to alignment. The prophets spoke in shadows. Jesus spoke in parables. The book of Revelation speaks in symbols. Why? Because divine truth is not given to the careless or the proud. It is given to those who are willing to go deeper. And just as Jesus opened the eyes of his disciples to see the mysteries of the kingdom, so now God is opening the eyes of this generation to behold what previous generations longed to see. The time of unveiling is not just coming, it has begun. God has always moved through patterns. He spoke through the feasts, through the Sabbaths, through the signs in the heavens and the shaking of the nations. He hides his messages in the soil of history, in the architecture of the temple, in the streets of Jerusalem. But when the time comes for those patterns to speak, he reveals them not to scholars or kings, but to those whose hearts burn with truth. The greatest secrets are not for the powerful, but for the faithful. There is something sacred in what has been buried for so long. It carries not only the dust of ages, but the breath of prophecy. And now that it is being uncovered, it is not just information. It is a warning, a sign, a trumpet blast from the throne room of heaven. God is not silent. He is not distant. He is not done. He is moving now, and he is revealing what he once hid, not to a people asleep, but to a remnant awake and ready. The world today is shaking on every side. Foundations we thought were secure are crumbling. Voices of truth are drowned in the roar of confusion, and the systems of man are collapsing under the weight of their own pride. But you, yes, you, were not born for such a time as this to tremble. You were not fashioned in your mother's womb to blend in with the noise. But set, you were created by the hand of the Almighty to stand in the center of the storm and declare the unshakable truth of God. You were not made for silence. You were made for sound, holy sound. In the days of Jeremiah, when the world turned its back on truth, one man's voice pierced through the darkness. In the days of Elijah, when altars were desecrated and Baal was exalted, one prophet stood alone against the tide. And today, in this age of compromise, distraction, and deception, you are called to be that voice. You are not called to survive the shaking. You are called to define it. This shaking is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to awaken you. It is meant to strip away what is temporary so you can stand on what is eternal. The world is shifting, yes, but the kingdom is advancing. And when the winds rage and the earth quakes, it is not the time for God's people to retreat. It is the time for them to rise. For just as the shaking exposes what is false, it also reveals what is real. And what is real in you, what is of God in you, will remain unshaken. There is a voice inside of you that the enemy has tried to silence since the day you were born. It is the voice of purpose, the voice of calling, the voice of the Spirit crying out in the wilderness of this generation. That voice was never meant to stay hidden beneath fear or doubt. It was never meant to stay locked behind walls of hesitation. It was meant to thunder. It was meant to rise like a trumpet on the wall, like a flame on the altar, like a river cutting through stone. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs voices of clarity. It needs messengers who don't acculture, but speak the truth of heaven. And you, beloved, are that messenger. You may not have a title. You may not stand on a stage. But your life is the pulpit. Your choices are the sermon, and your spirit is the vessel through which God will sound his call. You were not called to speak soft words in easy times. You were chosen to speak burning words in dark times. The shaking around you is not the end. It is the beginning. It is the moment when all false ground gives way and the true rock is revealed. The world may see chaos, but heaven sees opportunity. And heaven has chosen you to walk in it, not with fear, but with fire. Not with confusion, but with clarity. Not with compromise, but with covenant. Because the greater the shaking, the clearer the voice of the one who stands unshaken. All throughout history, the greatest moves of God came through those who refused to be silenced. Through shepherds who became kings, through fishermen who became apostles, through weeping prophets and fearless martyrs. They did not run from the shaking. They walked into it. They did not avoid the fire. They stepped into the furnace and found the presence of God waiting for them there. And now it is your turn. There is a holy fire inside of you, placed there by the one who formed the stars and numbered your days before you lived a single one. That fire was not meant to flicker quietly. It was meant to consume. You were not made for comfort. You were made for the front lines of a divine battle. And though the world trembles, though the nations rage, though the foundations are shaken, you were made to speak through it all. There is a sign buried beneath the ancient stones of Jerusalem, sealed under centuries of dust and silence, a sign that has waited not just to be found, but to be understood. It was hidden long before you took your first breath, before empires fell, before kings rose and fell, before the voices of prophets were silenced and the temple lay in ruins. Yet even then, it was waiting, not just to be revealed to the world, but to speak directly to the soul of this generation. And more than that, to speak into you. You see, the greatest truths of God are never only external, they are reflections of a deeper inward reality. The physical sign beneath Jerusalem is not merely a historical relic or archaeological marvel. It is a mirror held up to the heart of a world that has forgotten who it is, a mirror held up to a people who were chosen, called, but drifted, a mirror held up to you, not to show you the dirt of your past, but the destiny that still burns inside you. We speak often of prophecy as events, timelines, and symbols. But prophecy is more than that. It is a message from the eternal into the present. It is a voice calling to your identity. What lies beneath Jerusalem is not just stone. It is testimony. It declares the faithfulness of God, the promises yet fulfilled, the warnings yet unhided. And every sign he gives is not just a declaration. It's an invitation to turn, to awaken, to rise into alignment with the will of heaven. When God places a sign in the earth, he is also placing one in your spirit. When he reveals something ancient, he is stirring something eternal within you. There are places in your heart that have been buried just like the sign in Jerusalem, places covered by time, pain, or distraction. But now, just as the physical is being unearthed, so too is the spiritual. There is a call rising from the deep, a stirring, a voice echoing from ancient stones into the modern soul. What you carry inside you is not ordinary. It is prophetic. It is a seed planted by the same God who hides scrolls in caves and visions in dreams. It may have lain dormant like the hidden sign under Jerusalem, but it was never dead. It was waiting for your moment, waiting for your obedience, waiting for your yes. Because just as Jerusalem carries prophecy in her soil, you carry destiny in your spirit. This is not about geography. It's about alignment. Jerusalem may be the place, but your life is the vessel. And when the two align, the sign in the land meets the sign in the soul. The shaking in the nations begins to mirror the shaking in your bones. And suddenly, you realize the end times prophecy is not just unfolding around you, it is unfolding through you. You are not just a reader of the signs. You are a living, breathing fulfillment of them. There are many who walk past the signs of God without ever seeing them. They are too busy, too blind, too buried in the noise of this world. Those set, but those who see, those who feel the trembling, those who discern the hour, they know that what was buried is now rising. They know that this generation is not like any before it. They know that this moment is sacred and that the sign is not just on a map. It's marked on their hearts. So when you hear of a discovery beneath Jerusalem, don't just look in your eyes. Look with your spirit. Ask what God is revealing in you as he reveals what he hid in the land. Ask why he chose this time to uncover that sign. Because if the final sign is being uncovered in stone, then surely a final call is being stirred in your soul. This generation is saturated with sound but void of meaning. It scrolls endlessly, listens constantly, and speaks frequently, but seldom stops to discern. We live in an age where voices are everywhere, on screens, in feeds, from influencers, entertainers, politicians. But truth has become a stranger. Noise has become the substitute for wisdom, and confusion has replaced conviction. Yet even now, above the volume of this modern Babel, there is another voice, not from man, not from media, not from marketplace, but from the throne of heaven itself. It does not shout to compete with the noise. It roars with divine authority. The voice of the Lord does not need permission to speak, nor does it lower itself to the level of debate. It speaks through the wind, random but set, through the fire, through the pages of Scripture, and through the stillness that pierces the soul. It speaks through the chaos to those who have not allowed their hearts to be drowned in distraction. For those who still know how to be still, they hear it. Heaven is not silent. Heaven is roaring. The problem is not the absence of God's voice. It is the absence of our hearing. We have traded sacred silence for digital noise, traded discernment for convenience, traded the whisper of the Spirit for the applause of the crowd. We crave relevance more than reverence, comfort more than calling. But when the world begins to tremble, when the systems fail, when the false securities collapse, there is a moment of stillness where every heart is forced to asking, what is real? And in that moment, the roar of heaven breaks through. The voice of heaven is not political, cultural, or commercial. It is eternal. It is the voice that said, let there be light. It is the voice that called Moses from the burning bush. It is the voice that thundered at Sinai, whispered to Elijah, and broke through the tomb of Christ. It does not follow trends. It sets the course of destiny. And though the world may not hear it, those who belong to God do. They hear it in dreams, in burdens, in scripture, in the trembling of their own spirit. When God roars, it shakes everything that can be shaken, within and without. The nations may not understand it, but they feel it. The earth responds with tremors, the skies with signs, and time with acceleration. And amid all of it, there are those who suddenly awaken, not to a religion, but to a divine reality. They realize that the noise was a smokescreen and the silence was sacred. And in that realization, the roar of heaven becomes the direction of their life. There is no algorithm that can suppress the voice of God. There is no censorship that can mute it. When he speaks, hearts are pierced, chains are broken, destinies are awakened. His voice doesn't need your platform. It needs your obedience. It doesn't seek your performance. It seeks your surrender. And in a world that calls evil good and good evil, his voice becomes the dividing line, not to destroy, but to separate light from darkness, truth from deception, wheat from chaff. This generation was not meant to drown in noise. It was meant to rise in clarity. You were not born to echo the confusion. You were born to carry the frequency of heaven. You were called to speak not in volume, but in authority. The authority of the Spirit, the authority of the Word, the authority of the God who still roars. While the world scrolls past truth, you are called to stand for it, even when it costs everything, especially when it costs everything. Heaven is roaring, not just over the nations, but over you, roaring over your identity, roaring over your calling, roaring over the dry bones that have been waiting for life. It's not just a sound in the sky. It's a shaking in your soul. It is the call that comes not once, but relentlessly until you no longer ignore it, until you no longer run from it, until you realize the roar of God was never against you. It was the sound that's always calling you back home. You were not crafted by the hands of man, but by the very breath of God. The world will try to fit you into its mold, to tame your fire, to dilute your calling. But you were never meant to fit in with what is fading. You were not designed for the approval of men, for the applause of culture, or for the comfort's conformity. You were created with holy intention, to stand apart, to shine in darkness, to be the voice of the unshaken when all else crumbles. From the moment you were conceived, the enemy recognized the signature of heaven on your life. That's why you've faced pressure. That's why the attacks came early. That's why discouragement tried to drown you before you even learned how to fight. But pressure is not your prison. It's your preparation. Fire doesn't destroy gold, it purifies it. And the fire you've walked through was never meant to break you. It was meant to burn away what was never meant to stay. You were not chosen for ease. You were chosen for impact. God doesn't use the loudest, the richest, or the most comfortable. He uses the ones who are available, the ones who are willing, the ones who are burning. You don't need a spotlight to carry fire. You don't need a platform to carry purpose. Heaven's power doesn't rest on popularity. It rests on obedience. And when obedience meets holy fire, the atmosphere changes. The enemy trembles and history is rewritten. There is a fire God puts in his chosen ones that the world cannot comprehend. It's a fire that keeps burning even when the winds of life try to blow it out. It's the fire Moses saw in the bush, the fire Elijah called down from heaven, the fire that fell in the upper room. That same fire is not ancient. It is present, and it was placed in you for this time, for this generation, for this shaking, not to entertain, not to impress, but to awaken. The world will tell you to sit down, to stay quiet, to soften your message. But if the fire is real, you cannot be silent. If the fire is divine, you cannot conform. The fire of God does not coexist with compromise. It consumes it. You were not born to negotiate with darkness. You were born to confront it. You were not placed in this time by accident. You were appointed to carry heaven's fire into a culture that has grown cold. When God places his fire within a person, he marks them, not with fame, but with favor, not with applause, but with authority. You may walk through rejection, but rejection will refine you. You may face isolation, but in that wilderness, you will hear the voice of God more clearly than ever before. You will come out not weaker, but stronger, not bitter, but burning. And that fire will speak louder than any sermon, any post, any trend. The fire you carry is not for show. It's for battle. Random set. It's not for decoration. It's for deliverance. There are souls waiting on the other side of your surrender. There are chains waiting to be broken by the fire of your obedience. And while others run after approval, you are called to run after presence. Because the presence of God is not found in the crowd. It's found in the flame. And once you've encountered that flame, you cannot go back to living lukewarm. You were not born to echo the culture. You were born to carry the sound of heaven. You were not formed to be influenced. You were formed to be a divine influencer of atmospheres. You were not saved to be silent. You were saved to be sent. And the fire within you, if truly from God, will not allow you to settle for anything less than holy purpose. You are not just a witness to prophecy unfolding. You are woven into it. You are not merely living in historic times. You are part of what was written in eternity. The same breath that inspired the prophets, the same voice that thundered through Isaiah, Ezekiel, and John now whispers through your spirit, calling you not just to observe, but to rise and walk in the fulfillment of what they saw from afar. You are living in the pages they only dreamed about. What they longed to see, you are now seeing with your own eyes. There was a time when prophecy was future. Now prophecy is present. The scrolls are being unsealed. The signs are converging. The alarms of heaven are sounding, and yet many still sleep, but not you. You were not awakened by accident. You were stirred for purpose. That stirring inside you, that unshakable feeling that something greater is unfolding, that is not emotion, that is the call. That is the Spirit testifying with your spirit that you were born to carry the weight of this hour. You are not simply watching prophecy happen around you. You are being positioned by God to fulfill your assignment within it. That is why you cannot stay silent. That is why your spirit is unsettled with complacency. That is why the things of this world no longer satisfy you. Because you were not made to be a spectator in this season. You were made to be a vessel. A vessel through which heaven's purpose into earth's shaking. The enemy wants you to feel small, powerless, irrelevant. But even a mustard seed in the hand of God moves mountains. Even one voice crying in the wilderness can prepare the way for the Lord. You may feel unqualified, unnoticed, unworthy. But that's the exact kind of person God chooses. The Davids overlooked in the field, The Esthers hidden in palaces, the fishermen from Galilee, because God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. He placed you here in this generation, not because you're random, but because you're required. There are no coincidences in the kingdom. Your birth was timed by eternity. Your gifts were shaped by divine design. Your fire, your hunger, your conviction, it was all crafted for this specific moment in human history. You are the answer to a question this generation is asking. You are set, you are the voice to a people who are drowning in lies. You are the light to a world grown comfortable with darkness. When prophecy becomes reality, it requires a response, not a casual nod, not a comfortable sermon, but a life surrendered, a heart set apart, a voice prepared to speak even when it costs. Because when you realize that your very breath was written into God's story, you stop living for survival and start living for assignment. You stop avoiding the fire and start walking in it. You stop waiting for permission and start declaring the truth with boldness. There are moments in time where heaven leans in, moments where eternity touches the earth. We are in one of those moments now. This is not a season to be distracted. This is not the time to be lukewarm. This is the time to align with the voice of the Spirit and step into the pages of prophecy with holy courage. You were not saved to be still. You were saved to stand, to speak, to shine in the middle of shaking. The final sign is not only in the land, it's in the air, in the heavens, in the nations, and yes, in you. Because prophecy is not simply a calendar event. It's a living movement. It is the breath of God moving through surrendered vessels, igniting hearts, awakening nations, and preparing the way for the return of the King. Let me know if you'd like these 6 speeches combined into a full sermon, formatted for video narration or broken down for short-form content like Reels or YouTube Shorts. There comes a moment in every life when the noise faddest and all that remains is the voice of God. It may come in the silence of the night or in the middle of the storm. It may come through tears, through pain, through a whisper you didn't expect. But when it comes, you will know, because your heart will break, and yet somehow it will come alive. We are promised ease. We are not promised comfort, but we are promised purpose. We are promised a calling that cannot be taken by man, a fire that cannot be extinguished by failure, a love that cannot be separated by height or depth or time. And maybe, just maybe, the shaking wasn't sent to break you, but to rebuild you, to strip away everything that was never meant to last, so that what is eternal might finally be revealed. You may feel small. You may feel like your voice is too quiet, your wounds too deep, your past too heavy. But the God who calls stars by name, it calls you by name. The same God who used broken men and weeping women still does. And he's not looking for those who have it all together. He's looking for those who are willing to give him their yes, even through tears. This is not the end. This is the beginning. The signs are not just warnings. They are invitations. The pain is not just grief, it's birth. And though the world may tremble, and though darkness may rise, heaven is not silent. God is not distant. And your story is not over. Return to the altar. Return to the secret place. Return to your first love. For what the world has forgotten, God remembers. What the enemy tried to bury, God is about to raise. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are not disqualified. You are still chosen. You are still his. So lift your eyes higher than the headlines, higher than the fear, higher than the chaos, and fix them on the one who still walks on waves, who still breaks chains, who still heals hearts. The lion has not lost his roar. The lamb has not left his throne. And the Spirit has not stopped calling. This is your moment. This is your time. The sign has been given. The veil is lifting. The trumpet is sounding, and heaven is waiting for your answer